This channel won't survive without your subscription and likes. Help me. The American tourist, full of confidence, reached for the guard's uniform, thinking he could get away with it. But in the very next moment, the guard took an unexpected step forward, and in the blink of an eye, everything changed. What happened next would be remembered by everyone. Let's start from the very beginning. London, midday. A crowd of tourists buzzes near Buckingham Palace, hundreds of people with cameras and smartphones, their faces painted with excitement. Some are filming vlogs, others are reaching out to touch the grand gates, while many simply marvel at the immovable guards, the symbol of British royal discipline. Their red tunics gleam under the soft London sun, and the massive bearskin hats create a fierce, almost legendary image. Among all these people, one tourist stands out. Douglas "Doug" Burns, an American around 45 years old. A low forehead, a fat chin, a red face, maybe from alcohol, maybe from constant shouting. His stretched-out t-shirt, once white, is now gray, adorned with massive letters spelling freedom and an American flag. A worn-out gold chain dangles around his neck, and cheap plastic sunglasses sit on his nose, which he constantly adjusts with greasy fingers. His jeans haven't seen a washing machine in ages, and his sneakers look like he's been dragging them around for at least a decade. He gestures wildly, waving one hand while holding a plastic cup of Coca-Cola in the other. The fizzy drink sloshes over the rim, but Doug doesn't care. He doesn't even notice the sticky droplets staining his filthy jeans. "Dudes, check it out! These British robots don't move at all!" He shouts so loudly that a few passers-by flinch. He jabs a thick finger at one of the guards. Before him stands a tall, fair-skinned man, his back perfectly straight, shoulders squared, his face chiseled like stone. His red tunic fits flawlessly, as if pressed directly onto him with steam. His polished black boots shine under the sun, and in his hands, an intimidating rifle with a bayonet. His icy gaze is fixed straight ahead, as if he doesn't even acknowledge the obnoxious tourist. Doug, still chewing gum, smirks. He raises his hands in an exaggerated comical gesture. "Ooh, I'm so scared. I'm gonna check what their uniforms are made of." The crowd freezes. Doug turns toward his friends, who smirk and record him on their phones. One of them, a bald guy with tattoos on his neck, is already typing on Twitter, "American tourist tests British robots, LOL." And then Doug takes a step forward. He gets so close to the guard that he can smell his own cheap deodorant mixed with sweat and beer. Doug is just inches away from the British soldier. He slowly and deliberately extends his hands and wipes them on the guard's tunic. His sticky, filthy fingers smear over the perfectly ironed fabric. The crowd gasps. "Holy crap," someone whispers. "That's too much." Phones come out. Several British onlookers exchange disapproving glances. Even foreign tourists seem stunned. But Doug is pleased with himself. He lifts his chin high, smirks with a wide, greasy grin, and taunts. "What now, robot? No reaction?" He claps his hands mockingly, rubbing them together to shake off the stickiness. But then, the guard doesn't move. But his eyes ignite with an icy fire. Everything about his stance remains the same, yet something shifts. The crowd feels it. Like the eerie calm before a storm. Like the air itself is crackling, ready to explode. Doug doesn't realize it yet, but in a few seconds he will, and he's going to regret it. The crowd stood frozen. For a brief moment, everything felt like a paused frame. Tourists with gaping mouths, smartphone cameras locked onto Doug, the concerned expressions of Britons watching this disgusting spectacle unfold. Then, the silence was shattered by laughter. "Bro, this is legendary!" shouted the bald guy with neck tattoos, slapping Doug on the shoulder. His face was twisted with amusement, nearly doubling over in laughter. The other Americans in their group roared with delight. One of them, fumbling with his phone, muttered while tapping the screen, "Oh man, this has to go online. 10,000 views. Minimum." Doug grinned smugly, feeling like a star. He spread his arms wide, basking in the attention. But within the crowd, different voices began to rise. "That's disgusting," an elderly British woman whispered, clutching her grandson's hand. Her eyes were filled with revulsion and shock. "What a disgrace," a man in a sharp suit muttered, crossing his arms. He nodded toward his equally well-dressed companion. They had clearly seen American tourists embarrass themselves before. Other Britons frowned, shaking their heads. A young woman wrinkled her nose in disgust and turned to the guy beside her. "Why do they always act like this when they come here? They think they can do anything just because they're American." The guy spat on the ground, turning away angrily. The tension thickened in the air. People whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with disdain, anger, and outrage. But Doug didn't notice. He puffed up with pride, like a fat rooster convinced he had just broken the system. "What's the matter, man? Not gonna say anything?" He sneered, tilting his head back and laughing loudly. The guard didn't move, but he felt the cold rage stirring inside. His uniform was a symbol of honor and tradition. It was worn by the best of the best. Men who had undergone grueling training, men who had mastered discipline and restraint. This uniform wasn't just clothing, it was pride, and some fat American had just turned it into his napkin. But he showed no reaction. Not yet. A fatal mistake. Drunk on his own triumph, Doug took another step forward. "Ha! These guys are totally useless." He scoffed to his friends, still chewing his foul-smelling gum. He lifted his sticky hands and attempted to repeat his stunt. The crowd froze, but this time things didn't go as he expected. Before his filthy fingers could touch the uniform again, the guard moved, fast, lightning fast. And in that moment, Doug's world flipped upside down. The crowd stood frozen. No one fully grasped what had just happened. But Doug understood instantly. The guard had moved. A swift, precise motion. His shoulder tensed, a firm step forward, a sharp flick of his arm. And suddenly, a shove. Not aggressive, not violent, but firm and undeniable. The rifle's stock pressed against Doug's chest, pushing him back, just enough to establish a boundary, to make one thing clear: you will go no further. The crowd gasped. It was something unexpected, unprecedented. No one had anticipated a reaction from the guard, and yet, there it was. Quick, lightning fast, completely controlled. The aftershock. Doug stumbled backward. His feet tangled beneath him, and he barely managed to stay upright. His cup of Coke slipped from his grasp, crashing to the pavement, spilling sticky soda across the stone walkway. The crowd erupted. "Whoa!" a woman in a yellow dress gasped. "Well deserved!" A man in glasses nodded approvingly. "Serves you right!" someone called from the edge of the crowd. Some people laughed, others exchanged astonished glances, but no one defended Doug. He had brought this upon himself. Doug loses his confidence. Standing before the guard, Doug suddenly felt something new, something he hadn't expected to feel today. Uncertainty. The motionless British soldier, whom he had treated like a lifeless prop, had just revealed himself as a very real, very tangible force. And Doug had no idea what to do next. He looked up, opened his mouth, but no words came. Because the guard was already standing at attention again, as if nothing had happened. As if that moment had been nothing more than part of his standard protocol. As if Doug wasn't even worth a second of his time. The loudest silence. The crowd remained silent. But its silence spoke louder than words. Doug stood alone. The crowd wasn't laughing anymore. No cheers, no jeering. This wasn't the kind of humiliation he was used to. This was worse. People simply looked at him, like he was insignificant, like he was nothing. Even his friends had fallen silent. The judgment of strangers. First, the elderly British woman. She pressed her lips together in a firm line, looking at him the way a mother looks at a child who has misbehaved, not with anger, but with disappointment. Disgraceful behavior. She took her grandson's hand and walked away without glancing back. For the first time in a long while, Doug felt something he hadn't felt in years, like a misbehaving child who thought he could do whatever he wanted, until he hit a wall. Pathetic. The voice came from a well-dressed man who had been watching from nearby. He didn't even bother to look directly at Doug as he spoke, tossing the words into the air like a final, undeniable verdict. Beside him, his colleague, another impeccably dressed businessman, let out a short, amused chuckle and turned away. Came here just to embarrass himself. Nothing new. The crowd silently agreed. Some whispered among themselves, some recorded the scene, but not a single person stepped forward to defend Doug. The betrayal of his friends. And his friends? The ones who had been hyping him up, laughing hysterically just minutes ago? They weren't laughing anymore. They avoided eye contact. One of them quickly stuffed his phone into his pocket, pretending he hadn't been filming at all. The bald guy with tattoos awkwardly stepped backward, inching toward the crowd. Yeah. We should probably go. Yeah, let's go. Another one mumbled, nodding quickly. Then they turned and walked away. Doug froze. They were leaving. He wanted to call out to them, but no words came. The final blow. 2 security guards, tall British men in black suits, stepped in from both sides. They didn't say much. They didn't need to. They simply stood there. Sir, you need to leave, now. Their voices were cold, level, emotionless. Not threatening, not angry, just indifferent. As if Doug wasn't a person, just a nuisance that needed to be removed. Doug took a deep breath. His shoulders slumped. He turned away without a word and walked off. The video that changed everything. Someone uploaded the video online. Within hours, it had millions of views. American tourist humiliates himself in front of a British guard, gets exactly what he deserves. Tourist put in his place. When you think you're a badass but meet British discipline. The comments section exploded with mockery, disapproval, and debate. But by then, there was nothing Doug could do. The guard remains unshaken. The guard stood tall, unmoving, unfazed. He didn't even glance in Doug's direction anymore. For him, the incident was over. He knew he had won. He knew justice had prevailed. And though his face remained stoic, deep inside, he was smiling.